Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Gerard Golair, a horrible night to come out on and all that, so we've got an excellent gentleman here in Gary Brannigan to present that subject. Before we go any further, just any further ado, just if you'd put your phones on silent, please. In the event of a fire or emergency of any kind, we'll make a run for the door over there to one side and the door that you come in here this evening, up the steps and away to the left hand side, okay? We'll everybody follow Anne and we'll be okay, because she tells me what to do. Right, so our lecture here tonight is presented under the title the Leo Swan Memorial Lecture. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about him, I never had the pleasure of meeting the gentleman, but Leo Swan had a long association with the Tallaght area. His most notable associations have been as principal of Our Lady of Loreto Primary School during the 1980s and 1990s, and as a founder member of our Tallaght Historical Society. The teaching was only his day job, however. Prior to taking up teaching, he worked overseas with the cargo airline, the US Flying Tigers, a wonderful title. On his return to Ireland, he persisted with flying as a hobby and used his knowledge to the advantage of his other great interest, which was archaeology. Although aerial photography had been used in Irish archaeology before, but thinking of agriculture, there was amazing. Did this to me last year now, Sheila, when she wrote this piece there. Lots of big words in this one, 4 out of 10. Although aerial photography had been used in Irish archaeology before, Leo pioneered its widespread use. Having studied early Irish history and archaeology at UC, he was involved for decades in the promotion of archaeology. He also conducted research, undertook field survey and excavation, and lectured to students at the DIT in Bolton Street and Rathmines, St Patrick College, Drumcondra and Sayre Bull Skull. It would be wonderful if he was here today for Tallaght. It would be absolutely wonderful to give us lectures there as well. Among his published articles are reports on his excavations at Usher's Quay and Kilpatrick, County Westmeath. He later took early retirement from teaching and he set up with colleagues an archaeological consultancy company, I'm thinking about it now, which was Archtech. From its beginning in 1995, Leo was a great friend of the County Library, and they felt that it would be fitting to commemorate him in a very special way in the Tallaght area. They decided to inaugurate an annual Leo Swan Memorial Lecture at the County Hall in his honour. The lecture is now in its 14th year. This year we are delighted to welcome local historian and author Gary Brannigan, who will talk about the Holy Wells of Dublin. So without further ado, Gary.
Hello everybody. Gary Brannigan is my name, and I'm the author of Ancient and Holy Wells of Dublin. There's a number of books over there to my left. I'll just begin by saying that it's a subject that's very, very passionate to my heart, and I'm going to try and give you a flavour of the kind of work I've been doing in order to publish the book. Okay? So during the 5-year period between 2007 and 2012, I surveyed, identified and visited the exact location of each and every holy well or holy well site within the borders of the County of Dublin. An aspect of this challenge was the collation of all known information relating to the practices, rituals and folklore associated with each place. Of the 128 holy well sites I found documented in historical literature, I was able to locate and personally visit the exact positions of 116 of them, which still remain in one form or another. Of the 12 remaining sites I was unable to visit, any mention of 7 of these in historical documentation was so vague that it prevented any attempt to accurately identify their present location. And while the location of the last 5 are known, and they've been completely destroyed with infrastructure, buildings or housing now occupying their sites. In order to adhere to the authenticity of the subject, I deliberately excluded any other wells that had no tradition of veneration at any point in history. For example, you might there are other named wells within the county, such as Darley's Well, and is one. It's a well, but it's not a holy well, so I had to confine it at some point. The majority of information gathered was during a long period of field work, where many a roadside conversation with local people, usually the elderly, proved to be the most fruitful. The source documentation used in my research was vast and varied, but the bulk of the information was contained in the various issues of the Ordnance Survey maps and letters, the folklore collection at UCD, and the various historical journals. I found the field work to be the most enjoyable part of the journey. It involved visiting many beautiful and unknown parts of the county and talking to many friendly and welcoming local people along the way. Alternatively, it has to be said that on one occasion I have been on the receiving end of an angry farm animal or an angry farmer. As many holy wells are located in areas that haven't been visited in many times, in many years, some of them are quite overgrown. So bearing this in mind, I've been stung, torn and pricked countless times by brambles, nettles and branches. I've had many tick and insect bites, and I've generally had my body and my confidence bruised on more than one occasion. But the allure and the mystery of these places, coupled with a satisfaction in finding a holy well that may not have been visited in a generation or more, makes it all worthwhile. So, what is a holy well? A holy well may be broadly defined as a location where water issues from the earth and where the site is or has been a focal point for supernatural divination, the curing of illness through ritual, the cursing of third parties, and or the veneration of early saints, pagan deities or elements of nature, specifically the water itself. Holy wells as material forms with curative and spiritual reputations are found across many cultures, from Europe to Asia and the Americas. Across pagan cultures, it's accepted that the worship of natural elements of the landscape were widespread. These elements had, through their ascribed spiritual powers, an associated healing capacity. In particular, the liminal position of the spring or well as the marker, emergence of life from the earth, and as a boundary and portal between the underworld and human worlds, gave springs and wells particular metaphorical curative meanings. Known in Irish as Tubar Bianacha, literally holy well, or Tubar Nefa, literally saintly well, the location of many of these sites are within areas of natural beauty. Often in groves of trees, hollows in the landscape, the edge of waysides, or at points where borders and boundaries run or meet. Others are located hidden in darkness in mysterious underground tunnels, chambers or caves, and others again at the edge of the sea, where the salt water mixes with their own twice a day. Often they are situated in close proximity to megaliths of varying types, to religious houses or settlements, or to kilini or burial grounds for the unbaptized babies. While the term holy well can and is attributed to some man-made structures, objects or natural nations, such as early Christian rock basins known as Bullon stones, which is what we have here, hollow cross bases, so that's the base of a cross, obviously with the cross no longer in situ, the base of waterfalls, shallow pools where rivers sharply change direction, to name but a few. Generally speaking, holy wells are springs of fresh water which naturally rise to the surface at geological faults, where water from the water table or underground aquifers meet the surface. Most holy wells are of this natural character and never traditionally had the appearance of wishing wells such as this. This was a well in North County Dublin, and that was altered to look like this, so it never would have looked like this originally. So most of the holy well in Ireland would be basically natural springs that come to the surface of their own accord, and they wouldn't have been tapped or accessed in any way. Without the knowledge of the geographical or hydrological nature of springs, it can be easily understood why people in times past believed that such sites were sacred or holy, although it still does not explain why certain springs were deemed holy and others were not. It's believed that the power of a holy well is strongest on its pattern day or law patroon, usually a significant date on the pagan and or Christian calendar, and different for each well. A certain ritual known as a round station is performed in order to receive a requested favour or cure of a particular ailment. This involves particular prayers being said while walking around the well an odd number of times, usually 3, 6 or 9 times, in a clockwise direction, or in other words, in the direction of the sun. And the pilgrim would drink or bathe in the water at specific intervals. To complete a round, a rag symbolising the ailment is tied to the sacred rag tree, usually an ash, hawthorn, holly or an oak. When the rag decays, it is believed that the associated ailment will also decay. If the round is completed in reverse in the name of a third party, a curse is placed on that person. But it is said that worse consequences would befall the person who performs such an act if it is not deserved. It's believed that a sacred or supernatural fish, usually a salmon, trout or eel, resides in and is the guardian of some wells, and the sight of it either demonstrates the successful granting of a cure or request, or alternatively, and in contrast, the death of the person who sees it. It's generally reported that the water from a holy well cannot be brought to boil, and the wood from its sacred tree cannot be made to burn. The use of water from a holy well for domestic purposes was strictly forbidden, and the drying up, moving location, disappearance of its sacred fish, loss of power of the well, or the death or injury of the perpetrator was the usual consequence of this. It's interesting to note that many of these practices, rituals and associated legends have strong pre-Christian characteristics, not to mention the very preoccupation with water as a supernatural medium. The majority of the holy wells in Dublin exist in the northern part of the county. And there's a number of reasons for this. 54% of them exist in the north of the county, in the Fingal area. Generally speaking, this was the most sparsely populated area. It always has been. So it's no surprise that the majority of holy wells exist in the north of the county. 38% in South County and 8% in the city. So generally speaking, the more built up an area becomes, or more populated it becomes, the less you have holy wells. So again, that's the same thing. 65% are in rural or low population density areas, 28% in urban areas, and 8% in the city. I don't know if anybody is familiar with this. This is on Eustace Street, St. Winifred's Well. This was rediscovered when Temple Bar was being paved it was 1990. And it was renovated and lit up, and it's used as a big ashtray now. The majority of holy wells are dedicated to particular early Christian saints, as they are generally credited with performing a particular act or miracle on the site, whether it be simply stopping by to quench their thirst, baptizing local pagans in the holy well, praying on the site, or something as significant as performing a miracle, usually the creation of the well itself by the striking of their staff against a rock. The mass conversion of the Irish from paganism to Christianity is believed to have been one where little blood was shed, as existing sites of veneration were assimilated into the new faith system. This is one likely reason why we still have so many ancient sites in Ireland. The majority of dedications of holy wells are to saints. 58% of them. The main three, obviously, being St. Patrick, St. Bridget, or St. Columcille. 14% of them are what I call, there are other minor saints, if I can call them that, local saints, generally unknown outside their immediate locations, such as St. Moby or Moby, St. Nesson, St. McCullen, and then there are a contingent of foreign dedicated saints, such as St. Catherine, St. Werburgh, or St. Winifred, such as in this case. Their dedications probably came about by trade, or that there were a lot of people, traders from Bristol in particular, and these saints would have been from that area. The next category, 14%, are what I've called biblical characters, biblical figures. The main wells would be, of course, Our Lady's Well or St. Mary's Well, or simply Lady's Well, with the other two being Moses' Well and Jacob's Well. 6% the names are just totally lost. 5% are named after landowners, such as Grumley's Well. 5% are named after the cure. So you have Tubber Stool, which would be Well of the Eye. Tubber Nigluis, Well of the Ear. And you have a well in Portrane called Chink Well, which would be named after the old name for whooping cough, which is Chincough. And Chink Well comes from that name. 4% mythological figures, so we have Giant's Well and Phil McCool's Well. 4% are simply called Holy Well or Blessed Well, and then 4% religious house, so you might have Church Well or Abbey Well, that kind of thing. And then it has to be said that you have some wells that have several names for various different. Some but not all holy wells are protected under statutory legislation. This can be for complex reasons, but I believe that it's a general belief in certain circles that holy wells are not real or not authentic enough to be considered archaeological sites. This could be down to the fact that holy wells in many parts of Ireland are still visited and still used by pilgrims. It's also the case that many holy wells have been renovated on several occasions, make them appear more modern structures. Okay, what I'll do is I'll run through some of the wells that I've included in the book and that I visited along my travels. And there are a number of wells that are in the south of the county and in the Tallaght region in particular as well. So I'll go through them now, if you like. And this is St. Werburgh's Well. This is located within a copse of trees at the edge of a stream beside Lakeshore Drive in Airside Business Park in Swords. Now, it's recorded that in the 15th century, St. Werburgh's church owned land out in Swords. So it can't be certain, but it's quite unusual to have a holy well dedicated to St. Werburgh. St. Werburgh is a female Anglo-Saxon saint. It'd be very unusual to have a holy well dedicated to her in an area that up to very recently was still quite rural. The well was destroyed by persons unknown sometime after 2005, but it's since been restored, and a group of local people are very committed to its care. This is the well taken in, I think it's the late 1980s. I visited the well in about 2005 and it looked the same. Now, it was quite neglected. As you can see, it's quite overgrown well in here, and this is a stream. And in 2010, I visited, and that's what I found. And so it had actually been totally dismantled and destroyed. It's worth pointing out that there was planning permission on the land, and there was no reference to the holy well in the planning permission. So I'll let you draw your own conclusion. This is what the holy well looks like today. So and this was done by volunteers who lived locally. So one of the big problems with holy wells is people just don't know they're there. So you've got other people who are looking to make a bit of money, and it's up to local people to make sure that our heritage is protected. That's the well again. You can see it's quite a strong spring, and it's visited by people, not just Catholics. It's visited by Protestants. It's visited by pagans and Buddhists, and the offerings that are left, you can really see that fact. And I think for holy wells to survive, it's not necessarily a bad thing for multi-faith people to go and spend time there. St. Movies Well in Grange. St. Movies Well is located on the grounds of the old domain southwest of Skerries. It can be accessed via a disused mass path adjacent to a derelict gate lodge. The well is a solid structure constructed of large flagstones and boulders and overhung by a large sycamore tree. There's also a possible ancient bathing area a short distance to the north. There's a small neat cross carved on one of the boulders to the rear, and another cross more crudely carved on the second step down to the water. A bull-on stone or rock base also built into the wall on the right of the bottom step, and the water must be drunk from this in order to obtain the cure. Of particular interest is also the number of cup marks present on some of the boulders, pointing to Neolithic origin. These cup marks are said to be the finger impressions of the mythical Fionn McCool when he threw these boulders from nearby Lusk, thus giving the well its alternative name, Fionn's Well. The water is resorted to for the cure of warts, toothache, headache, and disorders of the throat. Legend also holds that a ploughman was ploughing an area within the nearby graveyard and was advised by the saint not to continue as it was holy ground. He responded by saying, "Saint Movi or Saint Movo, I'll plough my brook before I go," at which point the ground opened up and swallowed him with his horses and plough. Chinkwell. Chinkwell is located on the peninsula of Portrane. It's located in a small dark cave on the shoreline south of Tower Bay of Portrane. There's a high density of unusual geological features in the immediate vicinity, and this attracts much interest. The cave is fully inundated by the high tide twice a day, and access can only be gained at low tide by climbing down a rocky cliff face and walking along the small cove to the cave. Once there, a series of natural calcareous basins or brimstone pools greet the visitor. These are filled with cascading spring water, and the surrounding rocks shine deep purple and red when lit. Of interest within the neighbouring cave is a large hand-cut alcove situated above the high tide mark. This is known as the priest's chamber, and it is the location where the priests hid during the time of the persecution during the penal laws. Chinkwell was resorted to for the cure of whooping cough, previously known as chinkacough, hence the name. Pieces of bread were left as offerings, and it was necessary to visit the well before sunrise with the sick child to obtain the cure, but it was also only deemed successful if the bread was witnessed floating out to sea at the next high tide. Other general offerings left were buttons, rags, and other small objects. If you can maybe put this, I know there's a pathway there now, if you can put this into perspective, that a mother would have to carry a very sick child along the cliffs in the darkness, climb down a cliff at low tide, find the right cave, and bring their child there, leave bread in the well, and come back to the cliff head and wait for the daylight to come and for the high tide to come. And if the bread wasn't witnessed floating out to sea, it would have to be done all over again. So a lot of people don't realise that how significant something like this would have been. This cave is in total darkness. This is lit up by a torch, so you really have to know where you're going when you're looking for it. St. Bridget's Well in the village of St. Margaret's. St. Bridget's Well, also known as St. Margaret's Spa Well, is located at the end of a narrow laneway beside the new Roman Catholic Church in the village of St. Margaret's. It's a large brick-built tank likely to have been used for bathing in times past, and it was commissioned by Sir John Plunkett of Dunsogly Castle in the 17th century. It was previously 3 foot deep with constantly bubbling tepid springs, said never to freeze, but it's now regularly dry. When it is full of water, as in this case, it's likely to be as a result of surface water runoff rather than subterranean springs. Drainage works in the area are blamed for its present dry condition. 2 plaques on the south wall have the following interesting inscriptions. A blessing. This ancient fount by Bridget blessed, a timeless stream its bounty pours. Here let the pilgrim pause and rest, then seek in hope eternal shores. A curse. Desecrate this holy place and join the devil's legion. Drinking water will be scarce in fiery nether regions. Give you no doubt what you can and can't do there. So as I said, this was used for bathing. It was said to be a tepid spring, so it was said never to freeze and be warm. So I decided to give it a test one day, and that's me, in February, and it wasn't very warm. And I won't be doing that again in a hurry. St. Anne's Well in Raheny is located in St. Anne's Park. The Holy Well lent its name to the park with the addition of an extra E. It's located by entering the park by the James Larkin Road gate, walking around to the pond where it's located. It's comprised of large rough rocks, as is the area surrounding it, and it's only ever been dry in living memory. It was held in some repute in the distant past, and a pattern was held here until the 1950s, but no more information can be found. St. Patrick's Well in Finglas. St. Patrick's Well is located down a small lane on Mellows Crescent, just outside the village. It's in very poor condition and has a large cage erected over it, with a gate that's kept locked due to the constant vandalism and antisocial behaviour that occurs here. A pattern was held on St. Patrick's Day in previous times, and the well was resorted to for the cure of inveterate ulcers and disorders of the eyes. In the 1760s, a Philip Joyce from Kilkenny, posing as Dr. Ahmed Barumbara from Turkey, was successful in obtaining a government grant to develop the well into a spa, but his true identity was discovered soon afterwards, and his plans did not go ahead. So it's in very poor condition. If you notice how many steps go down to it from the ground level, the ground was actually raised when the surrounding houses were built. And I'll show you some. This is an old photograph of it. You can see it's at pretty much at ground level there. Give you an idea. And this is the well in the 1980s. Ladies Well in Mulhuddard is located on the church road south of the ruined church and graveyard of Mulhuddard. It's a large structure originally built in the 14th century and improved on a number of occasions since. It resembles a miniature church and it's open at both ends. There are 2 finials at each end, one with a cross and the other with a niche which holds the statue of the Virgin Mary. The front finial is engraved with the following: IHS, Holy Mary, pray for us. On the left side, O Blessed Mother and ever Virgin, glorious Queen of the world, make intercession for us to our Lord. Amen. And on the right, vouchsafe that I may praise thee, O Sacred Virgin, obtain for me force against thy enemies. The well was originally dedicated to St. Cuthbert, but rededicated in or around 1300. It was maintained by the Order of the Guild of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which was set up by Henry VI in the 15th century, and provided with a financial fund to maintain local Marian shrines, particularly Ladies Well. During their guardianship, numerous improvements were made to the well structure, and subsequent to the order being disbanded on the King's death, care of the well was undertaken by members of the Great Stew Nunnery. The practice was for the pilgrim to crawl on hands and knees around the well, and lying on their stomachs, put their head inside the well house and drink directly from the water. A large pattern was held here on Lady Day, or the 8th of September, and like at other wells, drunkenness and violence violence eventually crept in, culminating in the death of a man in 1760 during a fight at the well. The well was resorted to for the cure of sprains, cuts, bruises and rheumatism. Legend has it that the well was offended and it moved from the other side of the road to where it's situated. It's also held that there are 9 cures in the water, but nobody knows what they are. St. Patrick's Well, Nassau Street. St. Patrick's Well is located in the darkness at the end of a short tunnel in the Provost's Garden in Trinity College. The well is located, it's actually located beneath the footpath on Nassau Street, but was previously located above ground. When the mound which held the remains of the Thing Moat or Viking Parliament was disassembled in the 17th century and spread along Nassau Street, then known as Patrick's Well Lane, the well was forced underground. I don't know if you can see the Irish translation of Nassau Street is Troid Tuber Fork, which means St. Patrick's Well Street. It's a 40-foot deep draw well, but heavily silted up, and now only 4 foot deep. Archaeologists have assessed it on a number of occasions, but no excavations have ever taken place. It's generally thought that the celebrations held today on St. Patrick's Day originated in the form of the Patron Day here, and it's thought that St. Patrick baptised the first Dublin pagans here. Legend holds that St. Patrick was implored by the local people to do something about the water, as it was in the area was brackish. So he struck the ground here and fresh water sprang from the ground. It's also believed that frogs were first brought to Ireland when frog spawn was put into this well. So this is all underground. Lady Well. Charles Leslie, a rich wholesale chemist, lived in a large house in Dalkey called Carricknagrania. In 1828 he was unhappy about his view to the sea being spoiled by crofters visiting the well and by the squatters' cottages that had gradually been erected. He cleared away the small shacks and blocked access to the well, but a Miss Cullen, who returned from England, finding her house gone, challenged Leslie and demanded a house to live in and access to the well be re-established. He gave her a house on Leslie Avenue and piped the well to a new location on his land. He built a subterranean tunnel with access from a laneway beside where Loretto Convent is now. This tunnel, which was lit by grills in the ceiling, gave the people access to the well, but prevented them from spoiling Leslie's view. This action gave Miss Cullen the nickname of Lady Cullen, and the well became known as Lady Cullen's Fight, then Lady Cullen's Well, then our well, and simply Lady's Well. You can have a look. These are two different versions of the Ordnance Survey maps. You can see that this is an older map, and you can see Lady Well is listed on the map above ground, and in the later map you can see subterranean passage, and it's underground. So that's an interesting piece of history there alone. This is the right of way to the well, which goes down to the sea. And this is one of the entrances to the well. The tunnel was blocked up in the 1950s, but access was recently gained by persons unknown. And an inspection of it revealed the tunnel is in a very bad and extremely dangerous condition, with many sections having collapsed. It's completely blocked about 50 feet in from the entrance, so the well can't be accessed. It's quite a creepy place to be, actually, if you can look at that. The well was venerated, with offerings being left up to the 1950s, and the water was taken for various ailments. Local legend held that Our Lady also appeared at the well. This is one of the that used to light the tunnel. A lot of people don't know that this tunnel is here, and there's a hockey ground above it that the kids play on. And I'll show you how dangerous this can be. You can see the large boulders that have fallen through, and there's one halfway hanging down. And This is the end of the tunnel that's totally blocked. And the entrance to the right are where people will come in from the sea by boat to visit the Holy Well. But if you can imagine again, kids playing above ground, I think it's a matter of time before something nasty happens. Butterwell, Glencullen. Butterwell is located in a small field beside Butterwell Farm at the end of Fiery Lane in Glencullen, southwest of Johnny Fox's pub. The field in which it's situated is also called Butterwell, and the well in its original form no longer exists, but the spring has been enclosed by a concrete shaft and it's pumped to the house for its domestic water supply. This is how the well used to look. Surplus waters also feed a stone trough at the side of the road inside the gate of the farm. The circular concrete pipe is where the well is, and that's a pump house beside it. And this is the churn, or sorry, the trough at the side of the road. So there you can see the well in the background. It's piped out to here. Butter churns and utensils were washed out in the well in former times to protect against the theft of butter by witchcraft. It was also resorted to for disorders of the stomach and bowels. St. James's Well is located within a small avenue of trees on Jamestown Public Golf Course, just south of Stepaside. The avenue was previously the main thoroughfare in the area known as Canterbury Lane, and the well would have been in the middle of the road. The well is presently dry, and a very interesting rude cross stands above it. This cross has the appearance of being hewn out of a previously existing stone. On one face of it is carved a hunched figure with hands joined low on the body, and it's said to represent St. James, but it has the appearance of a male shielding a gig fertility symbol. That depression in the background is the actual well. On the reverse is a simple circle, raised circle. It's generally accepted that the original patron of the well and local church was Saint Queen, brother of Saint Kevin. Confusion in the saints' days, it became known as Saint James as well. St. John's Well in Lucan Domain. St. John's Well is located in the grounds of Lucan House, adjacent to the former chapel of St. John the Baptist. This chapel was converted into a bathhouse at some unknown point in the past, although likely in the 17th or 18th century, with the waters from the Holy Well being diverted to feed its bathing pool. This is the actual Holy Well itself. And this is the former chapel of St. John the Baptist. Interesting conversion. The Holy Well drops into a waterfall and passes under this bridge, and then it's redirected under the building. And this is the bathing pool. It's quite, you can see the plasters falling off the walls and the ceilings, and really needs something done to it, but you can see the pool is actually full of water. Lucan House is the residence of the Italian ambassador to Ireland, and visits are no longer permitted to the well for security reasons. Rumley's Well. Rumley's Well is located on scrubland adjacent to a property known as the Well. The entire area abounds with springs, and this makes it extremely muddy and difficult to approach. The well is a very small, overgrown structure with a flagstone covering it. Around the year 1900, carving was added to the well of the letters IHS, and 2 chalices were carved on the lintel over the entrance, although a thick layer of moss now obscures this from view. It was resorted to for the cure of general ailments, and rags were hung on the surrounding bushes. St. Anne's Well, also known as Sancton's Well, is located northeast of the ruinous chapel and graveyard of St. Anne's in the picturesque valley of Glenisnoe and overlooking the reservoir. The well and church were originally dedicated to the bishop, Saint Sancton, and through misunderstanding his name was corrupted, and the well then became known as St. Anne's Well. The well is a large dry structure situated beneath the roots of a very large ash tree, which is a small box nailed to it holding a statue of the saint. St. Kevin's Well is located on the site of the original monastic settlement where St. Kevin was educated as a young man, and adjacent to the now destroyed Kilnamanagh Castle. The tradition of occupation here, and bones and domestic items continue to surface in the gardens. In 1974, when the estate was being built, all remains of the settlement were bulldozed and the well was destroyed. But due to the high level of underground springs, the area which would have been occupied by 37, 39, 41 and 43 Elm Castle Walk were too waterlogged to be built on, and the well was reconstructed in a small garden. Unfortunately and inexplicably, the council filled in the well in or around 2003 and erected a large fence around the entire site with access being forbidden. The well is said to have sprung up at the site where Kathleen, Kevin's temptress, did penance. And most people might be familiar with this one. St. Columkill's Well, also known as Tubber Columkill or Tubber Nagluas, is located in the townland of Old Court, the barony of Upper Cross and the civil parish of Tallaght. It's located in a small deciduous wooded area and flows into a small stream. Together, the outflow from the well and the stream into which it flows form one of the 6 sources of the River Dodder. Local folk legend states that this well is the location where, in the 6th century, St. Columkill, who was of royal lineage, rested and quenched his thirst, while travelling on pilgrim in Glasnevin, where he was a student, to Glendalough, where St. Kevin was a hermit. He blessed the well before departing and left the impression of his knee on a granite rock there, which is still to be seen in the form of a bull-on stone or rock basin over which the water flows. Separately, it's documented that in the winter of 1592, Reggie O'Donnell, Art O'Neill and Henry O'Neill passed the Holy Well, subsequent to their successful escape from Dublin Castle, on their way to the safety of Fiach McHugh's stronghold in Glenmalure. Numerous cures have been attributed to the use of the waters, particularly for disorders of the eyes, throat and ears, the latter giving the well its alternative and lesser known name of Tubber Nagluas, or Well of the Ear. It's believed that 9 consecutive visits to the well are required in order to successfully obtain a cure. Tradition states that the water will not boil when heated, although attempting such an act was equally as unwise. There is little documentation of the well prior to the early 20th century, and for unknown reasons, wider knowledge of its existence ceased over time, possibly as a result of the laws enacted at Parliament during the penal times, forbidding all assembly and religious practices at holy wells. In the early part of the 20th century, the local postman Jimmy Murray from Rathfarnham was regularly observed by members of the local order crossing a local field and disappearing into the undergrowth. Subsequent inquiries led to the rediscovery of the Holy Well, although whether it was ever missing is up for debate. In 1914, with a local by the name of Denny Brennan, was successful in rallying Father Malachy Hughes, Father Phil Doyle and Brother Columba Cullen of the nearby Augustinian Novitiate in Orla to lend assistance to the renovation of the well. With the consent of the landowner, Charlie Byrne, numerous improvements were made. Nettles, brambles and thick undergrowth were cleared away and surface water from the spring was drained into the stream. It was at this point that the well was enclosed for the first time. As visits increased, rags and items of religious imagery on the nearby trees, as is the practice, and a sign with the words St. Columkill, pray for us, was erected northwest of the well at a newly opened entrance on the old Ballycullen Road. For the construction of a new bridge spanning the stream, wooden beams were donated by James MacNeil of Woodtown Park House on the nearby Stocking Lane, and construction was completed by the local county council workers in their spare time. A statue of the saint was designed by a Joseph Tierney and made by the Italian Deghini brothers of Lower Exchange Street in the city. It was erected in 1917 on a pedestal through which the water was channeled. In 1918, during the Great War, a pilgrimage was organised to the well to beg Columcille's intercession in averting conscription in Ireland, a very real threat in the British Empire, of which Ireland was a part at the time. The unveiling of the statue and the inauguration of the shrine was a happy occasion for the local rural community, and on Sunday, 13th of June 1920, a large crowd of people came from various parts of the city and county of Dublin, arriving to musical performances of the St. Columcille's fife and drum band from Fairhouse, who also displayed a new banner of the saint, especially made for the event by the Sisters of Mount Carmel, also in Fairhouse. Among those present on the occasion was Dr. John Heavey, Vicar Apostolic of Cookstown, Australia, and a large number of clergy from the nearby Orla College, Terranure College, John's Lane in the city, St. Mary's Tallaght and Boherlabrina. Also present was Professor Owen MacNeill, founder and chief of staff of the Irish Beers and co-founder of the Gaelic League. At the well side he gave a speech in the Irish language, although sadly the details of this have not survived. This place must have had a special place, as he was given a refuge locally while he was on the run during the 1916 Rising. In 1921, a new home was built for the statue in the form of a freestanding, gable-fronted statue niche. It was designed by a local architect by the name of Coakley and built using recycled stone from the nearby Old Bawn Mill. A large ash tree overhung the well up until 1960, when it fell. It served as a rag tree, and many crutches were left at its base as a testament to the many cures which were received there. The unusual but very popular custom here was to hammer medals into the bark, and so many covered the trunk that it gave the tree the appearance of having fish scales. It was possibly this practice that ultimately killed the tree, as has happened to other rag trees with similar customs, that have succumbed to metal poisoning from nails driven into them. In 1968, the Derry Association in Dublin planted an oak tree beside the well on behalf of the Northern Ireland Forestry Department, being a gesture of kindness. Attendances continued to grow at the well, and it soon became a place which locals were very proud of. The pattern continues to be held on the Sunday following the 9th of June, St. Columcille's Well, St. Columcille's Day. During my research, I've come across a very nice poem that was written about the well, although I haven't been able to discover who wrote it. So I'll conclude my talk by reading it, if I can. As I went out from Dublin to climb Montpellier Hill, to Killikee and Featherbed, and up the mountain still, my thoughts were scarce as pennyworth, until I chanced to see the name of dear St. Columcille bright lettered on a tree. A rugged stile, a rustic bridge soon to the spell, they led me to a lovely shrine beside a holy well. A statue of the saint is there, he looks so young and sweet, in robes of white with scrip and staff and sandals on his feet. In olden time, in golden time, I hear the water say, St. Columcille from Tulkaside came wandering up this way. Oh, bless the sacred, bright noonday sun, fair land and shining sea. Clear spring water, happy stream, come praise his name with me. And so to the memory that we keep, the story that we tell, the saint, the blessing, and the prayer beside this holy well. And we will come from Dublin, when June is with us still, to keep the feast and all be blessed by dear St. Columcille. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Very, very interesting. Any questions, folks? There surely has to be a question about something around here.
Just not really a question, but a comment. I'm not sure if you heard this about St. Patrick's Well in England. It's in a terrible state altogether.
Yeah, yeah.
And a few years ago, I was doing my best to route a heritage walk for children in one of the local schools, and it's nearly impossible to find anything that was workable
Yeah,
in the area. It's been so devastating on so many levels.
Yeah, yeah.
But a local person told me that I'd seen a photograph of it the way you showed it in the 1950s, nicely painted and kept, and I was told that it was the travellers who used
that's right. Yeah,
they used to paint it each year and keep it in such lovely condition. And when the city council decided to build small little cottages beside it, there was no respect whatsoever shown towards it.
Yeah,
The little stream that flows through Finglas, which gives Finglas its name, and Finglas,
yeah, yeah.
is not to be seen anywhere. It's underneath the dual carriageway. So it just shows the kind of respect and the social consequences which flow from such disrespect with the social problems that you now have in the area.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have respect for anything anymore. And I was just saying earlier, St. Columkill as well, and a side effect of the houses and the apartments being built so close to that is you've got a lot of, I suppose you could say, undesirable people hanging around there now, and there's a lot of dumping and that kind of thing. It's unfortunate, you know. So.
Maybe there's some truth in some of these old myths about interfering with the well or disrespecting them, etc. You know, that comes with it. You can't help but one.
There's a well in Ballarottery, St. Bridget's Well, that during the boom was destroyed by a developer, and it's firmly held in Ballarottery. He died less than 5 years later, and it's firmly believed that that was as a direct result of what he did to the whole well.
And that's Ballarottery in the north of the county?
In the north, sorry, not the one in Tallaght, in North County Dublin, yeah. And there's one, there's St. Patrick's Well in near Saggart, which was also destroyed. And what's the area it's in? Do you know the Adam and Eve, the stone pair? It's across the road. Said there's a St. Patrick's Well in there, and there were houses built there as well. And it's believed that the developer has had a lot of difficulties as a result of what he did there as well.
And there was a disaster there about a year ago as well.
Was there?
For Rush's Lord, just very close by.
Oh, in that was Crotchain, was it?
No, it was just
Up over Boy?
Just along there in Boy.
Yeah. So I don't know, the cottage that's right beside the well is derelict now. And as part of the planning permission for the houses, the council said that he must put a gate on the road, on the laneway to it, but he mustn't lock it. And he put a gate on it and he locked it. And someone came along and robbed the whole gate, so.
Right.
Yeah.
You said with a flag there for St. Columkill. I don't know where that flag is now, yeah.
I couldn't tell you. There is a banner for St. Columkill as well that's brought on the 9th of June.
I don't think
But that's not the original one.
No.
I honestly couldn't tell you. It might be in the Orla retreat centre.
Will it be, yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know why
The
they.
nuns might have it, no?
They could do. They could do. I really don't know, to be honest with you. But I'd say it's somewhere. I don't know what. Just replace it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to make something new, but you know, it was the original.
Yeah,
It was the
see
original
around somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, and you're coming up to 2020, a lot of 100 years for rededication, so it'd be nice to have the original stuff there.
Yeah, thanks.
Gary, two questions really. How many of the wells have active patrons going there on their patron day? The second question is, how many of the wells have rag trees that are in use today?
It's an interesting question because a lot of the wells are going through quite a resurgence now. So you have wells that never had rag trees traditionally, and some wells all of a sudden have them now. Because you have people, not necessarily members of the traditional religions, if I can say that, are visiting them and looking after them. So all of a sudden you see wind chimes and rags and everything that were never there before. Traditionally, there's very few. I know St. Bridget's Well in Clondalkin has a huge one, but again, that's not the original rag tree. The original rag tree is dead. Yeah. St. Columkille's Well doesn't have a rag tree, but there are ribbons and rags left from time to time, but they never seem to last there very long. With regards to patterns, St. Columkille's one I'd say is the most popular one in the county. It's a pity the other ones can't be like that. I know St. Bridget's Well in Clondalkin has one. I was trying to get something organised for St. Werburgh's Well in Swords, for St. Werburgh's Church in town to organise it. You know, because that would be relevant, you know. But with some people there's not a huge appetite, you know. But there's very few. I'd say you could count them on one hand how many active patterns there are, to be honest. Yeah.
Is there anything after St. John's Well, the one near Woody's Acre? No destroyed?
Yes and no. Where it was located is the row of houses beside the hotel. That used to be called St. John's Gardens. And when there was a large alcove and trough that was built over the well. And when they dismantled the well, they moved the big alcove, it's a big arch. It's sitting in the car park of St. James's Church on St. James's Street. And the trough is sitting in the front garden of the Order of Malta headquarters, Ballsbridge.
Clyde Road there, yeah.
Yeah. With regards to the well, the original well is gone. But in the row of houses there, somebody has retapped the source in their back garden. Further back, closer to Inchicore, the Tibetan Buddhist Centre have retapped the source, and they've built a huge structure over it. So technically, I'd say you could say, I mean, it's the same water source, so who's not to say that isn't this St. John's Well? It's not the original. It would be nice to retap the source and move the original structure back to where it was, but I don't know. It's covered in ivy in the car park, which is just sad.
Were you ever tempted to boil any water from it?
I'm smarter than that, I hope. I would be afraid to. I wouldn't know.
I was just going to say, do you know about St. Jude's Well? I know you haven't mentioned St. Jude's Well, going towards Malahide.
Yeah, St. Duloc's Well, yeah. There's St. Duloc's Well and there's St. Catherine's Pond.
That's right. Yeah.
And
they're very protective of what they have out there.
they are, yeah. Actually, yeah, that's another one. That's quite an active pattern in the Church of Ireland calendar.
Yes.
And but when they widened the road, the level of the well also dropped, so it's not as deep as it used to be. But St. Catherine's Pond is they reckon there was a cure for leprosy in that. St. Catherine herself has a connection with leprosy. But St. Catherine's, the subterranean pond is thought to be for bathing. But that's the only freestanding baptistry that survives in the country. It's very nice, and they're very oh, absolutely, yeah. They're very nice about showing you around, and the anchorite cell is still inside. So very, very nice place. Yeah.
On your journey, have you ever come across any fish that?
I haven't. No. I'd be afraid if I'd be afraid if I'd either win the lotto or I'd be in a grave the next day. I wouldn't know which. So there's a well in Old Bon, across, you know, the big park that's opposite the Old Mill pub. There was a well in there called Chapel Well that used to have a fish in it apparently, and the landowner blocked access, and the well moved from one part of the land to the other, and when it moved to the other part, the fish didn't resurface apparently. So that's the whole tradition. Yeah. So
any evidence of something associated with Melrone or Angus here in the village?
there was a St. Melroon's well in the graveyard there, but it's not known where it was. It was mentioned. It was mentioned previously, and it was lost, and then it was found again it was discovered under a dung heap or something like that, and then it was filled in again. So it's the graveyard now is much bigger than it would have been traditionally. So
So the source is still there?
it should be. You wouldn't know if it could generally if a well is blocked. Not always the case, but generally, if a well is blocked, it'll find somewhere else to come out. So the source mightn't necessarily be where the original well was.
Thomas.
Yeah, and that's Gore and Similar as well. Benny Myers, who was the sexton of Church Farm until about 12 years ago, he would be the expert on that.
Yeah.
He knows exactly where the well used to be. It was tapped when the director's house, I think in olden times, was on the site. The water was tapped to come up into the house. And he knew where the remains of the foundations of that house used to be.
Yeah,
So he got a fair idea
where the original structure was.
Well, he got a fair idea where the house was and where the water was pumped up into the
All
house.
right, yeah.
But it's not to be seen anywhere now.
It's where they built the road. Was the house not there?
It should be in the graveyard, actually.
All right. Okay. Interesting.
Can the water be used for drinking in any of them?
Some of them are very stagnant, and I'd be worried about drinking from them. But some of them, like St. Columcille's well, I'd say is fine to drink, genuinely. But like St. Columcille's well, if you drink from the pool, you've all sorts of things crawling around in there. But the actual water that's flowing should be okay. And anytime, I've never had any problem, you know. It kind of depends how close they are to houses or farms or this kind of thing, you know. But I wouldn't recommend anybody drink from any of them for fear of being sued or something, you know. You just wouldn't know, like, you know.
What was the most impressive cure you came across from people talking to you about the well?
There's a well near the airport, ladies' well, and it had two cures. A cure for fertility. So apparently women who couldn't have children went there and they drank from the water, and all of a sudden apparently they've had kids, 10 kids and all this kind of stuff. And there's women alive who believe that's as a result. The well is buried now. But it's also, I only found this after I published the book, but it was also believed that if you wanted to change the sex of your baby, you put the baby in the well. Which is a bit scary, but yeah.
It's so cold it dropped off.
That is.
Do you have plans to further research other wells in other counties?
I hope to do Kildare, and Meath has been done, either Louth or Wexford. I know there are a number of people that are more active in this area than there would have been 5 or 10 years ago. So it's a good time for them, because the more people that know about them. That was kind of the idea of why I did the book. Rather than people buy the book and leave it on a shelf, people need to go out and find them and visit them, and the more people that know that behind that hedge is a holy well, and these kind of belong to everybody, you know. They don't just belong to the person whose garden they're in, or, you know. So, yeah, hope to do more.
That is, folks. That was wonderful. Thanks very much. Gary has written 2 books, subjects very closely associated. They're here on display here to our left-hand side, if anybody's interested. Also, just like to say to you that switch back on your mobile phones. Lectures are all they're all uploaded or downloaded onto Facebook, and they're all available in DVD. David here is working away there quietly in the background all the time. So if anybody wants a DVD of any of the lectures, you only have to talk to David about that. And In the meantime, can I just say to all of you to have a very happy and peaceful Christmas. Hope to see you all the new year. Nulla cumna Glare and Slán